coming up in today's episode.
Part of what social media has fostered is an infatuation with the self and an entitlement to the validation of your views, regardless of how correct or incorrect they are. The moment I give up that accountability factor is the moment that it's all over. One is forbidding the evil is not a license to be a jerk. I mean, if we really get ultra ABC level, is fulfill the 5 pillars and don't be a jerk. Why is it your responsibility to police all the sisters online and monitor their hairlines? Who gave you the title as like hair inspector for women online? Like, where does this come from? Like, why are you uniquely empowered to do this? It's not your job. And it says everyone wants to change the world, but no one wants to help their mom with the dishes.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Usman here once again, welcoming you back to the Deenspiration podcast show. Welcome to episode 46, and in this one, we're getting into some juicy conversations about social media, the state of social media today, and how Muslims especially are interacting with social media and how this is affecting one's spirituality, our behavior, our character, perhaps even our intentions, diving into topics such as giving da'wah online, haram policing people, egos, talking about things that you have no right speaking about, influencer culture, and more. And joining me today, mashallah, is someone who's been on the show before. It is our teacher, Ustad Omar Usman, who is the author of the newly released Fiqh of Social Media book. And Omar Usman, mashallah, has been in the online Muslim space for a number of years, being one of the founding members of Muslim Matters, which you might know as being one of the kind of original and biggest blogs in the online Muslim space, who is now actually the executive director of the same website, the founding member of Qalam Institute. And throughout his years being in the corporate world and also the Islamic online world, he's observed a number of behavioral changes and issues concerning Muslims, their deen, and their behavior online, and has put it into this guide, sharing practical tips for Muslims like you and I, but also parents who want to have those tough conversations with their kids. So that's all coming up in today's episode. I can't wait for you to hear it, inshallah. A quick heads up that if this is your first time here, I would love if you were to go ahead and subscribe, whether you're watching right now on YouTube or listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, or anywhere else. We have tons more content like this coming up. And speaking of social media, we're pretty active on places like Instagram, Facebook, and recently we also started a TikTok page sharing some interesting, fun reminders in the form of short skits as well. So check the link in the description or the show notes for this episode, actually, deenspiration.com/episode 46, on information about our social media, but also where you can purchase Brother Omar's book as well. Alright, so without any further ado, here is episode 46, the Fiqh of Social Media, Avoiding the Traps of the Online World, featuring Omar Usman. Enjoy. Alright everyone, and welcome back to today's episode featuring special guest, our brother, our teacher, Ustad Omar Usman, who's joining us today for this topic of the Fiqh of Social Media. Assalamu alaikum, Omar, how are you doing?
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullah. I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm okay. And those who are fans, long-term fans of Deenspiration will remember that you've been on once or twice before? One solo episode at least. Yeah, alhamdulillah. Yeah. And that actually was on a similar topic, which was on the kind of social media side of things. But things have changed since then. You've done new things, and also you've kind of come out with the Holy Grail kind of social media. I was going to say social media Bible, but is that the correct term to use in this situation? Fiqh manual. But first of all, before we get into that, I want to ask how you're doing. How are things over there in the whole during this whole pandemic? Aside from the political side of things that's been happening in America, how are you and your family doing over there during this time?
I mean, relatively speaking, alhamdulillah, absolutely can't complain. It's been difficult because we know a lot of people who have been impacted, a lot of people who've gotten COVID, some more severe than others. But alhamdulillah, in all situations, we've been spared, alhamdulillah, but we've been home. We haven't done much, so ready for the ease after this hardship, inshallah.
Inshallah, that's a good way to look at it, the ease after the hardship. I was doing an episode with my teacher, Sheikh Radwan, about the spiritual kind of mentality with COVID, and he mentioned the light at the end of the tunnel, which is a very cliche term, but he mentioned that, there always is that light that comes after hardship, so may Allah make it easy, inshallah. And also, by the way, just a side note, wanted to throw it in there. Those who are watching probably won't know this, but Brother Omar Usman, mashallah, has become quite the barista recently. I've been following your journey. So something which I've been watching you guys do, and mashallah, you're quite the coffee connoisseurs over there, I must say, yourself and the other shuyukh, Qalam, etc. And the progression of your latte art, your designs has been amazing. So what's the secret?
So I would like to say that it was just, practice and hard work and all those things, but I think the reality was upgrading my machine seemed to help a lot.
See, I like honest answers.
Sometimes it's about the equipment, like I know you're into photography, and I'm sure if I handed you an iPhone, you could do all kinds of things with it, but at the end of the day, a nice camera does what a nice camera does.
100% agree. 100% agree, mashallah. Okay, alhamdulillah. So let's get into today's topic, inshallah, which is the fiqh of social media. Now, that term, fiqh of social media, quite clever, and you've used it before. You've had a blog out. But for those who are joining us and are hearing about you for the first time, can you just give us a bit of an introduction about what it is that you do, and a bit of background on how this book came around?
Yeah, so professionally, I work in the IT field. On the side, I've worked with a number of Islamic organizations in all different capacities. But one thing that I did do with, I helped start MuslimMatters.org, which back when it started was, one of the first big blogs when blogging was a thing. So kind of seeing the evolution of that Islamic dawah side of Islam, I guess. I don't know, Islam on the internet. But also just working with Islamic organizations and helping to navigate these new waters, how to promote content online, how to reach larger audiences. There's it's a tool, but it's a new tool. So a lot of people aren't familiar with it. And alhamdulillah, along the way, I got to work a lot with that. In doing so, just started noticing a lot around how people interacted, how it was different from real life interactions, how your masjid interactions may have been different from online interactions about Islam. It was almost like parallel universes in a sense. But just kind of noticing just a lot of these things and the way that it was impacting the way that we thought, the way that we viewed things, the way that we form our opinions, all these issues. And I realized everyone's noticing it, everyone's talking about it. I wonder if there's some traction to maybe trying to put a name on this and speak to it a certain way. And alhamdulillah, that caught traction. So a few years ago, started writing about the subject, started doing seminars, like little family night programs, and got really, really good feedback. So alhamdulillah, during this time of lockdown, I was able to finally sit down and get all those thoughts out into a book format.
Alhamdulillah, excellent. I'm happy for you. And do you know something that I like about this is that it came from real experience. It wasn't just an idea, let's write a book and become an expert on something, which unfortunately you see quite a lot these days. And perhaps something we'll talk about later on. But,
Yeah.
you started off in a marketplace, which was the new online space for Muslims. You saw the progression, and with that came the evolution of how humans have started to behave online. But interestingly, you've also been kind of taking note of how spiritually, we are changing as Muslims, or how social media itself. So before we get into today's questions, just wanted to talk about that term fiqh of social media, just because I think people who don't know the word fiqh or jurisprudence, who are maybe listening as beginners, and those who do are scratching their head. Is there such thing as a fiqh book of social media? What was the thinking behind that name when you put it together?
So I know for someone that might be like a student of Islamic sciences formally, they hear fiqh of social media, they're expecting a book of like fatwa on what type of interactions are halal or not, or this or that, and like very detailed academic type of rigor. And this project is actually not that there wasn't rigor put into the research. I don't want to misrepresent it, but the goal was more give an Islamic perspective in a way that's accessible for everyone to understand. And fiqh itself is understanding. And again, if we're going for the transparent, honest answers versus the revisionist history story, it just sounded right.
It sounds cool, right?
It sounds right.
Yeah.
And I think for most people, when they hear that term, they instinctively they get what it means. And when I see other people tweeting with like the fiqh of social media hashtag and just sharing their observations or thoughts about things that they've seen, it's in that same vein, and it makes me really happy because I'm like, okay, it clicks. Like everyone gets what it's talking about.
Great, and I've seen that hashtag being used by others, so I'm really glad it caught on. And the fiqh of blank has been a term that's picked up really well, and I'm glad that you found that niche. And honestly, I have to praise you for it, because we talk about Islam, we talk about the elements of practical worship, we talk about spirituality, we talk about hellfire and Jannah, but there's some conversations that are uncomfortable to have, namely because everyone is perhaps involved in that particular activity and does not want to admit that maybe it's not the best, right? And one of those is social media. We could tackle it from the angle of social media. Oh my God, it's taking over your life. Parents, watch out. Your kids, are on Instagram. What are they seeing? Or recently, astaghfirullah, WhatsApp is selling your the privacy policy, or certain Muslim apps, unfortunately selling your information to dodgy places. But I think the angle that I want to come in at today, because I'm sure that your book, mashallah, goes into a number of different chapters, and we'll talk a bit about where people can inshallah find the link to that today, is specifically what we're seeing online today, and some phenomena happening. This could go on for hours and hours, but in the space we have, I want to talk about a few issues. But let's ease into it. And the first thing would be, okay, so spiritually speaking, right? On that kind of fiqh, kind of Islamic spirituality side of things, what I guess have you noticed? There's obviously many, but perhaps the top couple spiritual ailments that you think have come about as a result of this evolution of how online behavior has come throughout social media use, the new apps that are out there. What are you noticing that's happening to the Muslim Ummah as a result of this social media and this technology that affects them in terms of their deen specifically?
So that is, that question could have 10 million answers. Yep. But as you were talking, the thought that immediately came to mind was social media has fundamentally, so from a spiritual perspective, social media has fundamentally changed the way that we interact with spirituality. And what I mean by that is this. Traditionally, before the advent of social media, a person's spiritual development was fairly straightforward. You, especially growing up in a Western country, you grew up going to your local masjid and your local imam was pretty much your source of spirituality. They taught you how to read the Quran. They answered your fiqh questions. They're the ones that your parents told on when you were misbehaving, and so on. And then you got to college, maybe you joined the MSA, you get exposed to other practicing Muslims and hear new ideas, and you grow and you learn and you read and you progress in a relatively straightforward manner down that path. And if there's a disagreement, if there's a confusion, if there's a question that needs to be answered, the authority figure is not hard to find. Now, I understand not everyone has an imam, not everyone has qualified scholars in their local area, but for the most part, you kind of know where to go and get an answer from someone that had a reputation, if not of being like a good, credible imam. You still had access to someone that was, let's say, at the least of upright character and perhaps above average in their knowledge relative to the community. That might not have been the best situation, but you had a place to go and get some type of spiritual development, right? You could get books, you could find videos, recordings, things like that. Now with social media, the fundamental change that's happened, I think this has the most ramifications, is that it has turned spirituality into consumer culture. And so instead of going and getting what it is that I need to know, instead of the imam saying, no, sit down and learn seerah, sit down and learn how to read the Quran. No, you need to sit down and learn the pillars of your salah first before you go off and ask me all these questions about all these other topics, right? There is a method to how you do it. Now spirituality is turned into almost an egocentric, consumer first type of situation where I'm going to consume the Islam that I want on my terms. And if someone is not going to give it to me on my terms, then it's not good enough for me. And so now instead of, again, spiritual ramifications are huge. Instead of my ego submitting to learn what it is that I'm supposed to learn, the ego now is driving what it seeks out to learn. And I think we see that manifested in dozens of different ways, whether it's how we treat our local scholarship. There's we do see a breakdown in our local communities because why is my imam not addressing these issues that I see on YouTube? Well, it's like you're on YouTube, you're seeking out the things that matter to you. Someone that's in charge of a community has to shepherd an entire community, which includes all different types of people whose needs may not entirely align with yours. Right. But instead of having that understanding, we just say, well, this person's irrelevant. I'm going to go seek out what I want. And when you're leading yourself in that way, you're going to stumble and you're going to fall.
Man, there's so much in there that I want to pick out, but I'm forcing myself to stick with the agenda for today's episode.
We can go out of the agenda if you want. Let's make the conversation interesting.
Yeah, no, the agenda itself is interesting itself. I've got some controversial things coming up, but I just want to maybe go into some tangent. That is so true because right now on the Inspiration Instagram, we've been releasing some tazkiyah content from Imam al-Ghazali's Ihya Ulumuddin, and today was about the impact of not preserving the tongue, and that in itself is a whole conversation about not minding your own business and so much. But interestingly, you mentioned the change in the dynamic of learning, right? So you don't go to the you're not saying you don't, but now teenagers are less likely to go to the imam, sit there and have the discipline and the patience to go through Alif Bata up until Qul A'udhu bi Rabbin Nas, perhaps their hifth as well, study a class properly. And this is why I'm really proud and happy to see organizations that are still, mashallah, keeping that strong and supplementing it with social media instead of social media being the only means. But you mentioned something interesting there about access, because I think something that I'm seeing a lot of these days, and maybe what has made this kind of idea of online self-serving fatwa shopping culture worse, is that some people argue that, well, I don't have access to an imam, especially the sisters come with this complaint, which is understandable. Sometimes they don't have a masjid nearby, and if they do, perhaps that masjid does not accommodate for sisters. Perhaps the imam doesn't relate to them. So whether it's being relatable or just not having access at all, do you think that is part and parcel of why people are finding comfort in finding that cool sheikh online who speaks their language, who says the things they want to hear, who makes something like the seerah, as you mentioned, more relatable. And that has, of course, created this whole entire celebrity culture of speakers that we'll go into later on. How do you think that has impacted this? And do you think we'll ever go back to the way it was now that we've created this within our community?
To answer the first part of it, for people who don't have access in their community, that's obviously a different situation, right? And like you mentioned, sisters uniquely, unfortunately, are impacted in that way where they don't have the access to the same resources, and that's something the community needs to fix for sure. Yes, in the meantime, if they're able to get that education, that enrichment online, of course, take advantage, right? It's a tool. The criticism that I'm making is less about someone that says, okay, I want to learn the seerah, so I'm going to go find someone that has the seerah and I'm just going to follow along, or follow along with someone's the seerah of the Quran, right? Because those still are basic, essential parts of the religion. My criticism is more someone that says, I'm a practicing Muslim, I'm going to go now jump into all of these debates and battles with people. And so even though I don't know the seerah, instead of studying the seerah, I'm going to sit down and watch all these videos of people debating back and forth on issues that really don't impact my life. And I think that's where the difference is that when people are jumping into either hypothetical situations or academic debates that don't impact them, and they're also not in a position of being a formal student who needs exposure to those topics, right? Like, that's where it starts to become problematic, is someone that doesn't know the seerah, but they want to debate about the very intricate details of theology that scholars have been arguing about for over 1,000 years. It's like, well, you and Google aren't going to settle that debate anytime soon, right? So get back to what is actually of benefit to you. And this is where I think it comes full circle with the idea of not having proper leadership or access to proper leadership, is that good leadership guides you on the spiritual journey and is able to help you course correct. When you don't have that and you're having to look online, it's a little bit harder, because you do have to direct yourself, and it takes a level of discipline to say, like, okay, I don't have access in my local community, I'm going to sit and learn the best that I can online. The challenge there's that person has to know to seek out what is beneficial to them and is actually bringing a positive impact in their life, bringing them closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, versus the delusion that happens where a person thinks that they're being productive, but all they're doing is, just debating or arguing with other people, for lack of a better term.
So
I think you get what I'm saying there.
I get what you're saying, and that's going to be probably the next part of this discussion. But okay, then, so how do people, so I'm a young Muslim, maybe late teens, early 20s. I've maybe gone into university. I've now come out my shell. I'm independent, and for some reason, joining my MSc, etc., has given me this new motivation, this boost of this desire to go and seek more knowledge. It's natural. It happens to many of us. Happened to me as well. So now this person naturally wants to learn, and they want to put that into action. And besides the MSA talks and the kind of local activities they have to go and partake in, how does that person navigate the online world, and what should they look for? Because you mentioned good leadership. And also you mentioned those who dive into topics that are not in their realm to speak about. So how does someone decide or determine this is a safe place for me to go? Because something which I unfortunately went through is that although I had teachers around me at that phase of my life, and I was attending Islamic courses, I have to admit that these kind of social media personalities and the clickbait, sensational, entertaining versions of that topic they were talking about at the time becomes addictive, right? And before you know it,
feels very important.
It feels very important, and before you know it, you actually start to doubt people who you're learning from, the real shield, because they don't say it in that cool hip way, or they don't spin it with a fantastic thumbnail and everything. it doesn't sound as cool. So how does someone ensure that who they're following and what they're learning, I guess, is sound? Probably a difficult question, but what would you look for?
It is a difficult question, and it can feel overwhelming, but there are some kind of rules of thumb that help navigate, right? So one is, very rarely are you on an island by yourself. Usually you have other people around you. So a friends group, right, can kind of keep you in check and let you know if you're acting a little bit crazy.
Mm.
And I think anyone, in the example that you've described, and I'm very familiar with this example, person goes through middle school, high school, just like a normal American, or I don't know, like a Scottish kid or whatever, right? And then in college, suddenly they rediscover their Islam and they jump in full force.
Mm.
The group of friends that they had when they were just a regular kid will be able to tell them, you're acting like a nutcase, or they'll see, when you act crazy, people will call you out on it. Let's start there. Parents also, we tend to underestimate our parents, but parents have a very, very good gauge of being able to identify when you're acting dumb. They're able to identify when you're going through a phase. And as much as we say, oh, it's not a phase, it's not a phase, this is my life, like, your parents are not dumb. Your parents are experts in you. The same way that, like, someone studies medicine for 20 years to become an expert in medicine, your parents have a PhD in you. So they understand you better than probably anybody else. And that's a good gauge of how your religious practice is going. If the things that you're learning about Islam are alienating your parents, that's a very clear red flag that something is obviously wrong with the path that you have chosen for yourself. You know what I mean? But in terms of also just learning and where am I going and is what I'm getting safe or good, I think there's two things, right? So one is, as you grow, and I think this is very important, is to always have that mindset of, I'm a student, I'm learning, and I'm going to grow. Not everything that I learn is going to be as it seems. I'm going to learn some things that appear to be black and white and non-negotiable, and I'm going to later learn that wasn't the case. I'm going to be very strict about something that I might learn later that actually there's some leeway and I can ease up. There are going to be some things that I don't take seriously that I'm going to come to realize, actually, I do need to take a lot more seriously than I was. And be ready to have that natural evolution and growth. I know that sounds very basic, but a lot of people don't do that. A lot of people jump in and they just think that I have access to all this information. I've listened to 100 hours of lectures, so this must be right. This is it. Everyone else is wrong. I'm on the truth. I'm on the haq, right? Like, it doesn't work like that. The other thing to look for is this, and scholars have even written about this, like, who do you go to get fatwa from? Well, go to someone that you trust their character and their knowledge. And as basic as that sounds, it filters out 80% of the stuff that you see. If you just apply that filter, do you trust this person's character? Almost all of these Islamic personalities that have built themselves up by tearing other people down, they fail that litmus test because they don't exhibit good character, or they take pride in having bad, like, as ridiculous, it's just ridiculous. They take pride in having bad characters. Like, okay, that's clearly not someone that you can learn from. The other thing to look at is, what is the end impact of the knowledge that you're learning? Now, look, it doesn't take a PhD in fiqh to understand the very basics of Islam, which is worship Allah, be close to Allah, and treat other people around you well. I mean, if we really get ultra ABC level, is fulfill the 5 pillars and don't be a jerk. I mean, if you can manage that,
you should tweet that.
you're doing okay. But if the things that you're learning and the people that you're learning from are creating divisions between you and your Muslim family and your Muslim friends, it's time to stop and reassess.
Yeah, I love that Follow the 5 pillars and don't be a jerk. That should be like a t-shirt, I think. But it is as simple as that. And I was actually kind of, that emoji that's like the guilty face that's like has its eyes rolled and it's like, uh-oh. Yeah, so that's kind of what face I had on internally, because what you described there is exactly what I went through, to be honest. Mashallah, I was studying with local scholars who've traveled for decades. They went to like the most sacred places on earth with experts in those fields that they're learning, whether it's fiqh or science of hadith or whatever. They've come back and they're learning, but I felt guilty because I was finding so much joy in this online drama, right? So switching on to that for a little minute, this could be an episode in itself, but I think we've been giving advice to the general public, but I want to switch the attention to those people out there. And this goes to me as well, because, the Inspiration in a way is a da'wah page. Although we don't sit and, call people out and debate everyone under the sun. But to those then who find joy in that and partaking in that, I want perhaps your advice to them, because it's so easy. We were talking about cameras earlier. For me to pick up this camera, record myself, speak about something, and if it sounds good enough and if I get enough followers, suddenly I am now an expert in this field. And if I haven't done the learning it takes, I'm potentially misguiding the masses, right? So obviously there's 2 issues here. The issue is what you're doing is wrong, for sure. But number 2, it's the impact of that. It's what you're doing to all those people who are perhaps ignorant of the fact that you don't know what you're talking about. They're taking this, they're learning that, they're passing it on. And those who come along with the correct information, now it doesn't seem as cool because, that's what the actual answer should be. But you've had this social media package version of it. To those who are inclined towards that, and to those you mentioned earlier who take this pride in using social media to bait people into their content, where their da'wah has become all about the views, the subscriptions, etc., what advice would you give to them? I guess with having written your book in mind, knowing the impact social media has had over the years, yourself as a father to your children, and someone who actually hangs around with proper scholars, right? And you can see the difference between these people. What would you say to them? What should they do or not do to stop this madness, I suppose? That's what I'm trying to get at without being rude.
Yeah, no, I get exactly what you're saying. Because unfortunately, if you're a Muslim and you spend any amount of time on the internet, you run into this problem. And advice targeted specifically for people who are on utilizing the internet for dawah purposes, let's say, right? And let's say I'm talking to you and me, because we both fit that definition of people who use the internet for Islamic stuff, loosely said. And I would say, first and foremost, you have to have people that you refer back to. Like, you have to have your own shura council of sorts that you either run things by, or that have the ability to say, like, no. You know what I mean? So I have people that I can go to and run things by and see, like, hey, is this appropriate? Is this inappropriate? Is this okay for me to say? Is this not okay for me to say? Even till now, I've been giving khutbah for, God, I'm so old, over 20 years. And even till now, this year notwithstanding, because our masjid's still been closed down, but this year notwithstanding, we have our own little group text of khatibs and imams and scholars. And even till now, yes, with 20 years experience and a khutbah not really being the most advanced intellectual exercise, in the sense that we're not up there talking about the intricacies of inheritance law. We're talking about patience and forgiveness and things of that sort. But still, the people that we have in that group all have over 10 years experience, and we still validate. I'm going to speak about this on Friday. Is this appropriate? Are these examples okay for me to say? I'm quoting this ayah of the Quran to make this point. Is that an appropriate explanation or tafsir of that verse of the Quran, or am I off base here? Right? We have that mechanism in place to double check what we're doing before we get on the mic. And with social media, I think is very much the same thing. And I have personally, I have had countless situations where I've been tempted to post something, and I will text one of those people and I'll say, like, can I post this? And I'll get back the answer, no. I'm like, okay, fine. Right. And, you know, hey, you know what? That thing might have probably gone viral. Maybe I would have gotten a lot of followers out of it, which means I could have done more hair to more people, right? Like, that's how your mind works. But it's like, no. The moment I give up that accountability factor is the moment that it's all over. Because then you only become accountable to yourself, or in the case of social media, you're only accountable to your fans, and the fans are fickle because the people who don't like you will leave, and the people who do like you will come in, and you just create your own echo chamber. You don't actually have any accountability, as large as your platform may be, unless you have people in your life that can tell you no, or that you can run something by. Like, it's not going to happen. The other component of it is, and again, is basic concepts. It's Sunday school level concepts, but we just don't apply them. But it's intention. What is your intent in posting something? Is the intent that the people who read this will come closer to Allah, that this brings benefit to them? If it does, okay, fine. But if the intent, and this is very hard to gauge, but if the intent is to tear someone else down in an effort to make yourself look bigger, if the intent is to post something by which you just get attention, because that attention translates quite literally into followers and eventually money and notoriety, then there's a very big problem. And usually the notoriety and that type of thing happens when someone is driven by their own ego more than they are the benefit that they're doing. And a telltale sign of that often is that they don't have teachers, or they don't even have long-term friends. I'll tell you, this is the most interesting thing that I've noticed. When we look at people who have that reputation, I will tell you the things that I've noticed are, number one, the people that are the most vociferous online in doing, I'll say, this destructive type of dawah that turns people off, that alienates people, that attacks. They're most often absent from their local community. They are not khatibs. They are not giving halakas. They are not teaching classes, mostly because anyone with half a brain knows that this is not a person you want to give the microphone to. So they are ostracized from their local communities, which is not a sign of pride and martyrdom as they wear. The Prophet said that be with the jama'ah, be with the group. The group is, for better or for worse, it's your community. And if there's 75 masjids in your city and they're starving for khatibs, and you got 1 million followers online, but none of them want you to give khutbah in their masjid, there's a very, very big problem, right? So they're absent from the local communities. The other thing is that they don't have teachers, and they don't have long-term relationships. And so what you'll notice is that they cycle through people. So one person is their sheikh or their teacher for a little bit of time until they turn on them. Then they find someone else that agrees with them. Then they turn on them. Then they find someone else that agrees with them until they turn on them. So they'll always have a teacher, but that teacher is never more than 2 or 3 years old, because they can't hold on to a relationship with friends or teachers or shuyukh for any extended period of time, because they end up alienating those relationships. And that's a sign of a very destructive personality.
So that's really interesting. And to be honest, when you think about it and you look behind the smoke screens and everything, you can kind of get that vibe from certain people who come to mind right now. But I guess in that way, they find their sense of security and validation in the online kind of band of followers that they create, right? Because you notice that anyone, like you said, with half a brain cell can tell a mile off that this is not right, but they'll have a loyal army of people ready to defend them. And it's like, is this really who is this? I'm a Harry Potter fan, so I can picture Voldemort with his little group of Death Eaters in the corner. That's what it looks like, what it sounds like. And subhanAllah, something which baffles me is that some of these people claim to have teachers and they talk about their teachers, but they still do some of the most ridiculous things. And I actually sometimes refuse to believe that their teacher let them do that thing. And if they did, then I really I'm just shocked, subhanallah. But khair, I don't want to dive into that. But there is on the flip side, there is a lot of good in this when somebody is I suppose they have the guidance behind them. They're staying within their lane. But then this switches up a different kind of side of that conversation, which is people who have the right intention, and they have this banner that they hold up, which is forbidding the evil and enjoining the good, right? And under that guise, that's their license to now go out, and I suppose give da'wah to people. And yesterday I posted a kind of a TikTok thing, an Instagram reel, where I was doing a little skit of a brother who would tell a sister off because one strand of hair was coming out of her hijab. But if you click on his follower count, he's following all these half nude women, right? And it got a lot of traction. And I noticed that, people, and someone commented and said, well, why shouldn't you tell them off? And his question was, don't you want them to go to Jannah? Why all these people are doing these haram things, right? So even if the person's intention's correct and they use that excuse, is that a valid reason to I suppose, even if you're a nobody, to go into people's comment sections, to DM people, and to tell them that what they're doing is wrong, I suppose?
See, so I mean, there's a very easy sarcastic answer to this, but no, it's not appropriate by any stretch of the imagination, and and that should be the end of the discussion. It should just be, no, it's not appropriate, and that's the end of it. But the reason that it's not the end of the discussion is because part of what social media has fostered is an infatuation with the self and an entitlement to the validation of your views, regardless of how correct or incorrect they are. I know that it's, there's a whole different issue, but I know that we always say things like, well, everyone's voice matters. No, it doesn't. Not everyone's voice matters equally. Not on all subjects and not in all situations. They don't. And for a person to think that they can just tell, and look, and so there's a number of things to break down, right? One is forbidding the evil is not a license to be a jerk. It's not a license to be blunt. There's a reason that we have concepts like hikmah, wisdom, compassion, building relationships with people, right? Would a person who wants to leave a comment like that, would they be willing to walk down the street to their Muslim neighbor's house, ring the doorbell, and then say, "Uncle, you bought your house on interest. You're going to hell. I'm forbidding the evil. Sell your home." Oh, would they do something like that? No, they wouldn't. It's ridiculous. But that's the example of what they do online. They're entering other people's homes and yelling at them. And for the person that says, well, shouldn't we be able to tell them? Why? Why are you the one that is entitled and empowered to tell them? Why is it your responsibility to police all the sisters online and monitor their hairlines? Who gave you the title as hair inspector for women online? Where does this come from? Why are you uniquely empowered to do this? It's not your job. And the entitlement factor is a large part because they think, well, I'm being someone that's giving them good advice. And there are principles in the religion that say you cannot forbid an evil if it's going to create a greater evil. And so let's look at it very pragmatically. If a Muslim sister is online and she has videos online, whatever, are random guys that she doesn't know leaving comments that are bullying her going to bring her closer to Allah or hate the Muslim community? It's not a very difficult question to answer. So given what the answer will be, is your enjoining the good and forbidding the evil enjoining any good or forbidding any evil, or are you actually creating a bigger problem? And if you're creating a bigger problem, then you probably need to quiet down and work on yourself.
Man, it's such simple concepts, but so difficult for us to follow. And this actually brought to mind, I don't know if you saw recently The Social Dilemma on Netflix. Yeah. So, this idea of the ego, the views, and people, following our ideas.
Oh, can I pause you for 1 second? Because we've kind of broached on this a little bit, but I want to make sure to mention this more explicitly.
Sure.
When it comes to doing good online, one misconception that I want to make sure people understand: view counts do not translate into good deeds. People think that just because I reached so many people, I'm getting all these good deeds. It's like, no, maybe in the case of the example that we just used, the more people that saw it, maybe the more people you turned away from the religion.
Yeah, and the more sin
you made them hate the religion because of your comments. And so it might be proof against you. But the other thing is this, like, doing good in Islam, we've never restricted it to it has to be scalable and reach the largest number of people possible. It's always been about what impact did you have. And I can't remember where I heard this quote, but it's so relevant to all of these things that we do that we think are having a huge impact. And it says, everyone wants to change the world, but no one wants to help their mom with the dishes.
Oh, I've heard this one. I love this. Subhanallah. So true. So true. Thank you for that additional input there. Oh man, this is going to touch a lot of nerves, I think. And, even myself, I'm reflecting upon my first few years on social media as, mashallah, a warrior of Islam and saving the ummah. Many, many good points there. But back on that point of the social dilemma, and it talked about, the way that these platforms are engineered by experts who actually, in parallel with the kind of the gambling and the casino industries, where the dopamine mechanism, right? So I was just thinking there, like, on Yawm al-Qiyamah, Shaitan's gonna be like, it wasn't me. And so I wonder if, like, the social media algorithm is gonna be like, it wasn't me. But do you think that has an impact as well? We'll just do this briefly because we've got some more questions before we end. But going back to the actual technology itself, and not just the ego and inflating oneself and assuming a position that one does not deserve, but do you think that literally the red badge, the view counts, that someone who is not fulfilled elsewhere in life, like these online trolls who perhaps get their only sense of validation by doing what they do you think it is part and part just the algorithm getting the best of them? The fact that the buzz they get from that like or that comment is making this worse and exacerbating it?
So I don't know if it's necessarily the algorithm getting the best of them, but things like seeking attention, things like seeking validation through alternate means if you don't get to the primary ones, things, ego and all that stuff, those are human problems that have existed since the beginning of time, right? What social media and the social media algorithms and the red badge and, the view counts and all of these things have done is they have magnified and exacerbated all of those issues. So seeking attention and validation has always been a problem for humankind. We've always had that problem. But social media just multiplied it by 10,000 because it introduced I think one good way of looking at it is like this. I always give people this example. The currency of the worldly life is wealth, right? You will compete with each other over wealth until you visit the grave. Wealth being your money, your status, your kids, your car, your house, your title, right? That's worldly currency. That's how we measure who's successful and who's not. We know that in the akhirah, currency is deeds, right? So in this world, if you wrong me somehow, I can sue you and get a financial penalty to have justice done in this life, right? That's how we do justice, is we can sue one another and we get a financial repayment and we settle that problem. In the akhirah, currency is deeds. So if I wrong you, you come to me and say, give me your good deeds, or you give me your bad deeds as a way of establishing justice, right? There's currency that determines who is successful and who's not, which is your deeds in the akhirah. Long with an intro to say that in the online world specifically, attention is currency. And so whoever is trading in the most attention is winning. And if someone has a problem with seeking attention or needing attention to feel validated, all that slot machine thing is going to be going crazy. Because not only do they have a scoreboard now, right? Now they have a scoreboard because they look at their follower count, they look at the number of likes, the number of comments, the number of shares, all the numbers of all these things. Now we're giving them a scoreboard of how much I'm liked versus not liked. And the other part of it also is that, well, if I have a problem with seeking attention, what types of things get rewarded on social media? Usually it's not good, uplifting types of things. You know, if we want to go back to the dawah example, if you made a video every day of the importance of praying 5 times a day, you're not going to go viral. If you make a video on the importance of paying zakat, you will not go viral. Although salah and zakat are mentioned over and over again in the Quran.
They're viral.
Right? Establish your prayer and prayers, and establish the prayer and pay your zakat over and over again. So obviously it's important. No one disagrees with the fact that those are important. But the bottom line is that if you made videos on that, they would not go viral. However, if you started making videos that were seeking attention, and you wanted to, if you wanted to make videos with the intent of going viral, or I want to reach as many people as I can so I can do good. Well, what's the blueprint for that? How do other people go viral? How do other people build followings quickly? Well, it's probably going to be by tearing other people down, by coming up with religious things that no one has ever heard before, or religious opinions that no one before you has ever held, which in and of itself is very problematic, but you will get attention and you will go viral. So that dopamine, so that it creates this really vicious cycle, because then a person can become deluded enough that, well, if I was wrong, I wouldn't have this many followers. If I was wrong, all these people wouldn't like me. And you know what's funny? And I'm going to make this analogy because it makes a lot of sense. Actually, I'm going to give you 2 analogies. I've written about this before, but I like mentioning it because I think it makes it click. When we do our khatib training, one example that I give is about the importance of soliciting feedback so you know whether you're doing well or not. And I always highlight the trap. The trap is the guy who's a horrible khatib, but he gives khutbah every week. And every Friday, when he's done speaking, there's a dozen people waiting to meet him. And they say, Assalamu alaikum, amazing khutbah. Assalamu alaikum, oh, jazakallah khair, that was incredible. They were sleeping through it. They didn't listen to a single word, but they afterward, out of politeness, go tell that guy, great job. Now, for 10 years, every Friday, a dozen people tell him, you're amazing, you're amazing, you're amazing, you're amazing, you're amazing. Now someone comes and says, Sheikh, you ever thought about taking a public speaking class because your presentation skills are kind of bad? In his mind, rationally, intelligently, he is going to think this person is an idiot. Because for 10 years, thousands of people have told me I'm an amazing speaker. Now this one guy comes and tells me I'm horrible. He's the idiot. And it makes perfect sense. I'll give you one more example. I don't know if you guys have American Idol.
We have it here, and then all the subsequent versions of it that came out, X Factor,
okay, so you got the gist of what it is. But what do? They show a story of someone that grew up in some small town. Singing has been their dream. They interview their friends. Like, oh, this person's amazing. This is what they were born to do. This is their passion, blah, 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 blah. They get up and start singing, and the judges are like, please stop. Never do this in public again. Your service to humanity is for no one to ever hear your voice in public. Like, that's what you should do, is be quiet. Never sing, never pursue this career. You're horrible. And that person, because they've been told their whole life, follow your dream, follow your passion, you're amazing, you're the best singer, you're going to win this competition, they get emotionally devastated. They're not able to handle that feedback. And they start crying. And then their friends are like picking them up saying, oh, the judges just can't handle how amazing you are.
Yeah.
And it's like, all that's happened is that you were not good at this thing. And instead of being able to handle that feedback like a mature adult, you went back to seek validation to reinforce your own delusion of yourself. And that's what happens on social media, is no matter how wrong I am about something, there's going to be a dozen people that come and tell me I'm amazing. And if I let that be the only thing I ever hear, I'm going to drink my own Kool-Aid and believe it.
Subhanallah. You know, that's a great analogy. It makes for good TV, but it's a shame.
It is. It is. Yeah.
This actually brings me back to, so one of my earliest teachers, good friends, and actually his father and younger brother were both my teachers at one point as well. Tafsir Doctor, our dear Sheikh Suhaib Saeed, you may know him.
Yeah. Yep.
So, he's local, and I filmed one of his khutbahs once, and it was about a believer is the mirror of the believer, and this concept of being able to check each other and be honest with each other and tell each other that actually, you're not as great as you think you are. Do you know, if that was, you know how when you're on social media and like you have this update that comes up, imagine if like it told you that actually you're not as good as you are. Only if you accept the terms and conditions that you're not that great, you can continue. That would maybe be better. But we are coming to a close soon, but I've got one more angle to come in at, and that is the angle of is I guess influencers, right? So this term is quite loose and in the air. What does an influencer mean? You mentioned earlier that people think that their opinion matters, and going on this trend of people feeding your ego and drinking your own Kool-Aid, people now believe that because they have the numbers there, that they have an authority to, tell people this is how you should live your life. But as we know, the majority of these influencers online, big, small, and in marketing terms, there's different types of influencers, and the business side of things, to market through them is a booming industry. But the people on our end, the consumers who see this, they're very caught up in the bright lights, and they see the lives of these influencers. And I suppose this question is directed towards you as a parent, advising other parents for maybe their children, right? What would you say to those, and what advice can you give to those who have been duped by this lifestyle and as a result are experiencing, comparison syndrome, and that is affecting their own mental health, no matter whether they're young teens or adults like ourselves who perhaps are thinking, I'm not as good as X, Y, Z person?
Like comparing themselves to influencers, you mean?
Yeah, influencers, especially because more on the lifestyle side of things. But then I suppose those who are influencers in terms of view counts, who are perhaps pursuing a certain type of career or entrepreneurship venture, and that makes everyone else watching them think, man, I'm not really as great as that. But in reality, their life isn't as it seems. It's packaged up in a certain way online. So what advice do you give to those who can't break out of that and just believe everything they see, essentially?
I mean, I think you just said it, which is you just need to know that it's not real. That's a large part of it. And when I say not real, I mean it's more sinister than you think. It could be as simple as these really scammy get rich quick people that are posting pictures in Lamborghinis and Ferraris and things like that, when all they did was pay $2,000 to rent them for a day and take like 7 million photos.
Yeah.
When they don't actually own anything, right? Or renting an Airbnb and then making it look like that's where they live. And even people have been exposed for this recently on TikTok, like going to sets that make it look like they're on a private jet when it's just a little cutout of something. Like a stage. And so one part of it is realizing very much that it's not real. No one's life is ever going to be that perfect or curated so so perfectly that that's how someone lives. And I think if you follow people who give that impression, I would unfollow them. And I've had to do that. Like people that just really give off this false image of everything is amazing, I'm winning at everything. It's not like that in real life for anyone by any stretch. And and this goes into some other topics, but I think it's worth mentioning is learn and familiarize yourself with things like survivorship bias, where the easiest way to explain it is like this. It's like saying, I won the lottery, you can too. All you have to do is just buy a ticket every day and believe. And it's like, well, no, this is not how it works, right? Like,
Yeah.
you're selling something and maybe it worked for you, but it's not going to work for everyone. And what happens with social media is it inordinately puts the attention on the people who succeeded at something, and it makes it look like everyone's doing it. And if things were that easy and that attainable and everyone could do it, everyone already would be doing it.
Sure.
Not just a handful of people. And so I think it's very important to keep those things in mind when comparing against others. But also, there's an element of taking care of the things that you are posting and the image that you're portraying sometimes. Am I portraying this image of just everything is amazing and I've got everything together when really I'm struggling? Like, that's something to try to keep yourself in check on as well.
And on that note, of unfollowing, do you think, because some people would say that you have to just take a social media break completely, cold turkey, a few months off. One of my friends was on the phone to me before this podcast and said, I just spent about 4 months off of Instagram, right? Great. But you're saying that, and I guess there's no right or wrong answer, but do you think it's better or more advantageous to oneself to navigate through this and learn how to control what you're seeing? Or do you think there's benefit in just leaving altogether and perhaps going and washing the dishes once in a while?
Look, this question has come up for me a lot because all the reading and research I did on this topic, and the vast majority, by the way, is not from Muslim sources, mostly non-Muslim sources, because we, just talking about the effects of social media and digital lives and all that stuff, right? To me, it was almost impossible to read that material and conclude anything other than we should not be on these platforms at all. Now, with that said, I'm very much a pragmatist, and I understand that that's not going to happen. Especially in a pandemic where we're all online, that's really our only way of connecting with people. So, we're on it even more than normal. I get it. And so that's why my approach is more be practical about it, find ways to limit the negative influences. And it's not as if there's no positive benefits, right? Like, if there were no positive benefits, no one would be on it. So clearly there's some use, there's some utility, there's some benefit. That's why we're on these things. But be aware of how it's impacting you and how to limit it. That's my approach. And so that's why I do give some tips in the book also, like, how to unplug. If someone can take a 4-month break, fantastic. I think the mistake that people make is they say, like, oh, what's the point of only getting off for 4 months if I get right back on? The point was those 4 months. That was the point. The point was those 4 months where you recharged and you felt better. Okay, now you got back on, but you know what? You can take another 4 months off later. You've proven it to yourself. That's the value. The value was those 4 months. It doesn't have to be more than that. We go all or nothing. That can be the benefit. Maybe your downtime is 30 minutes every morning and 30 minutes at night. Okay, cool. Start somewhere, but intentionally build in things with the bottom line being you are dictating and in control of your usage of it as opposed to the other way around.
Jazakallah khair. Brother Omar, it's been a pleasure once again. I've had a really good time talking to you, and I'm going to wrap up, inshallah. We're going to go for a very short break, but before that, when we come back, I'm going to hit you with a really short rapid fire round of random questions if you have time.
Yep, let's do it.
Cool. And before we go to the break, remind everyone where they can go online to purchase the Fiqh of Social Media book.
Yeah, Jazakallah khair. So the Fiqh of Social Media is available on Amazon. Uh, on Amazon through paperback or Kindle format. It will, inshallah, be available soon through some Muslim booksellers. We're working on that in Singapore and the UK. So keep an eye out, but in the meantime, Kindle and paperback through Amazon.
And those who are still on the edge and not sure, why should they buy it? Like, what's in it for them? Aside from all the benefits you've mentioned, of course, and from your expertise so far that they've heard.
What's in it for them, I would say, is two. There's two main benefits that I hope people get. One is that they get an action plan that helps them manage their own usage. So it's not just a one-time thing, I go and I do this, but it's got action items for them to continually revisit. It's something you can revisit at any time and just, spruce up, fix up, clean up your social media usage. The second thing that I hope that it accomplishes, or that people get out of it, is that the book becomes an excuse for them to have the tough conversations. So one feedback that I got when I was doing programs and khutbahs on this topic was, I remember very specifically one time, one of our family friends, an uncle, came up to me and he said, Omar Beta, this was a wonderful khutbah on social media. And I'm thinking, uncle, you don't even know what Facebook is. What do you mean this was a wonderful khutbah on social media? And he goes, no, he goes, I'm not on these things. He goes, my kids use it all the time. And there's some things about what they do that make me uncomfortable, but I haven't known how to talk to them about it. When you mentioned XYZ, that gave me a way to bring the subject up with them. And so I hope that that's what the book does, is the book becomes an excuse by which you can bring these topics up and talk about them.
Excellent, Jazakallah khair. All right, guys, now for a quick break. We'll be back in a minute, inshallah, with our rapid fire round. The brand new book, Fiqh of Social Media, Timeless Islamic Principles for Navigating the Digital Age by Omar Usman, and with a foreword by Sheikh Abdul Nasser Jangda, is now available to purchase on Amazon. Praised by multiple prolific Islamic speakers and scholars, the book serves as a guide on how to maintain your spiritual integrity online, navigate the ever-changing landscape of social media, applying prophetic etiquettes online, using social media as a tool for spiritual development, and much more. Visit ibnabiomar.com to learn more. Alright, welcome back, and here we are with one of our favourite parts of the show, which is the rapid fire round, this time with Brother Omar. Alright, I'm going to just hit you with these questions, answer as quick as you can, inshallah, a random assortment. Alright, you ready?
Let's do it.
Bismillah. Okay, starting with some Islamic ones. Your favourite name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala?
Al-Halim.
Al-Halim, which means?
Forbearance.
Forbearance. Favourite surah in the Quran?
Surah Yasin.
Mecca or Medina?
Medina. Who's
your favourite Sahabi and why?
Omar radiallahu an, because of the name.
Alright. If Omar makes it to Jannah, inshallah, what would be the first thing you would ask Allah for?
Oh man, I have no idea.
Something you've always wanted.
I just want to get there. I haven't thought that far.
May Allah grant us all Jannah, inshallah. Okay, completely random. What is the strangest place you've ever had to pray?
Strangest place. Oh, this is a good one. I've had to pray in a couple of weird places. When I worked I used to work in a hospital pharmacy, and we had a stock room in the back. And I had just started working there. My boss was Muslim. He said, "Oh, just set up your prayer rug in the back in the stock room, and everyone's already seen me pray." I was like, "Okay." So I set up my prayer rug. I started praying, and this dude that I worked with just walked in right where I was praying and just started stocking and unstocking the IV bags off the shelf, and I kind of tripped up, but true to my boss's words, he just pretended like I wasn't even there, and he just kind of did his thing and kept moving. So,
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. Do you know what's funny is that you featured in our khushur book, and we mentioned like the things that destroy your khushur, and that's one of them. Okay, and on that weirdness, what's the weirdest question that someone's ever asked you as a khatib or as a teacher? Islamic question.
Weirdest question. I don't know if I've gotten any weird ones, but I have had people come up to me and ask me to do like, just because I gave like a random khutbah on like, patience or something, people come and be like, oh, can, do marital counseling for us right now after your khutbah? And I'm like, not a chance. You need to go talk to someone qualified for that. I'm sorry, I can't help you.
Okay. All right. Moving on. What is your favorite type of coffee?
Espresso is favorite type to make.
Okay, so favorite type to make, and then let's say favorite blend, I suppose.
Favorite blend that I've tried is probably a place out of Seattle called Storyville Coffee.
Okay.
No, I take that back. Favorite coffee I've had is Kahwa House in Dearborn.
Okay,
Yemeni coffee.
Shout out the inspiration discount. I'm just kidding. Okay, summer or winter?
Winter.
If you could only eat one food for the rest of your life, what would that food be?
Chicken wings.
What are you guilty of saying the most? Word or phrase?
Word or phrase? Probably now or right.
Okay.
I think those are my crutch words.
Is Omar Usman an early bird or a night owl?
Former night owl, aspiring early bird.
What's your favorite pastime?
Reading.
Okay, and you had your reviews of books online. I remember, and did you start a book club?
I'm doing a book club through Productive Muslim.
Correct. Okay, and where can people check that out?
This is productivemuslim.com. Is through, they call it the Baraka Academy.
Awesome. Okay. If you were isolated on an island and you could only take one thing with you, what would it be? And I should point, there's no electricity there, so you can't take your coffee machine.
If I could only take... I have to be cliche and just say the Quran.
If Allah were to give you a superpower, one superpower, what would you want that to be?
Invisibility.
Interesting. Okay. Tell us one thing that people would be quite surprised to know about you.
Oh, there are so many.
The most embarrassing one. Sheikh Abdullah Adoro, he came on the last time, right? When I asked him this question, mashallah, Sheikh Abdullah, beefy, strong, fitness, right? He mashallah revealed his love for sleeping with teddy bears.
Wow.
So that's your benchmark. So I want to shout out to Sheikh Abdullah, but that was a great episode, mashallah.
I love Sheikh Abdullah. He's awesome.
He's awesome.
Man, let me think here. Would people be surprised to know, without saying what, but I'm a sucker for like just trashy TV sometimes.
Okay. I think we all are. I think I would take trashy TV over trashy social media. Yeah, any day.
That is true.
Yeah. Okay. Complete the sentence. The one thing that I cannot live without is...
Oh, the irony of this Fiqh of Social Media podcast, my iPhone.
Okay. Complete the sentence. The biggest pet peeve I see on social media is...
Oh, biggest pet peeve is people who take their own opinions too seriously.
Complete this sentence. The one thing I wish people would do more of on social media is...
Ignore people instead of resharing and refuting.
Oh man, that should be like a law. Okay. And who is your favorite person or a page to follow on social media currently?
My favorite page that I follow right now is... Man, let me think. I want to be real. I'm trying to think whose content I've actually like engaged with or like watched most. So it does have to be Islamic, or it can be anything.
Anything.
If it's anything, it's probably at the moment Sam the cooking guy.
Okay. Alhamdulillah. Aside from being an amazing barista, what's a hidden talent that you have that no one else would know about?
I can twirl my pen perfectly, like in a circle around my fingers.
Do we get a demo of this?
I can demo it.
If you mess up, I'll cut it so people won't know.
Yeah. Okay. So this is the microphone's in the way. So can you see? I have to get up on the webcam.
Sure. Oh, wow. Slow motion. I have to do it in slow motion. MashaAllah. Great. Okay, now moving on. Last questions here. What is the best advice you have ever received?
Probably, I don't know if it's the best. The one that always sticks in my head is, because my dad said it like 10 million times, was learn from other people's mistakes instead of your own.
And what is the best advice that you have for other people?
Best advice that I have for other people. My advice would be to always focus on how you can add value to others.
What's the number one thing that you want to be remembered for?
Ooh, that's interesting. I don't think I've thought about that. I don't know. That's probably something, you know, I mean, inshallah, people remember me as being good to my family.
Okay, inshallah. And last one, who is currently your inspiration? Who inspires you the most? It could be someone alive or someone who's passed away.
Someone that inspires me. I don't want to say no one inspires me. That would be kind of a...
Oh, come on. You have to give an answer. It could be currently. It doesn't have to be like the definitive, answer.
You know what? I will tell you. So the honest answer is this. I don't want to name anyone.
Okay.
But I would say it's that different people inspire me in different ways. So other people that I see that I think, for example, like friends that I know that are like really good fathers, like they inspire me in that way. Or people that I see that are, again, not famous people. I'm talking about just, friends of mine, right? Or people that I know that, for example, they're really good at work. Like they inspire me in that way to be better at those things. So I would say I have people within my group of friends that I look up to and get inspiration from in different ways that way.
Amazing. All right, Brother Omar, thank you so much. We are now wrapping up, inshallah. That was a wonderful episode, great insights. And for those watching, once again, the Fiqh of social media is now available online. The link will be, inshallah, in the show notes for this episode. And you can find Brother Omar on social media on which handles?
So best place to find me is ibnabiomar.com/newsletter. Email list will be kind of the hub for everything that I do, but all the social medias at Ibn Abi Umar. Well, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook.
Okay, again, they'll be in the show notes page. Thank you so much, Brother Omar. Any last words before you leave us of advice, or do you want to just go back to make some more coffee now?
I might just go make another coffee, but Jazakallah for having me on. Second time. This was fantastic. Really enjoyed the conversation.
Barakallah feek. Again, I hope we have you back a third time in the future. Good luck
Inshallah.
With the book launch. I pray that it goes well, inshallah, and I'm sure many will benefit from it. But until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum assalam wa barakatuh.
Alright, so that was episode 46 with Omar Usman. I hope that by now you have understood the potential dangers of social media, but also alongside the many benefits that it brings as well. Nowadays as Muslims have got many challenges as it is, and dealing with the online world with all of its internet trolls and misinformation or information overload and so much more is difficult. And it can be very hard to navigate one's faith and find that middle ground, find that balance without getting too carried away. So I don't know about you, but I thoroughly enjoyed that conversation. And if you enjoyed it as well and have your own thoughts and opinions, we love to hear from you, because of course this entire podcast is for you, it's for the listeners. And so if you're on YouTube right now, go down below and leave your thoughts about this topic. What have you observed on social media that you don't quite think is good, and how would you change it? Or what are some ways that you kind of monitor and track your social media usage, or avoid these traps yourself? We'd love to hear from you, inshallah. If you're listening to this podcast on your phone, go ahead, take a screenshot and tag us at Deenspiration on Instagram. We'll share you on our story, or tag us at my Deenspiration on Twitter, along with at Ibn Abi Omar, to make sure that Brother Omar also sees your posts. Interacting with all of you is one of my favorite things to do, and especially when it comes to this topic, ironically, fiqh of social media, I want to hear more about your thoughts on social media as well. And lastly, don't forget to visit deenspiration.com/episode 46 for all the links and resources mentioned in this episode, especially the Fiqh of Social Media book by Brother Omar Usman. Once again, I'm so thankful that you came here, that you listened. If you made it this far, a quick subscribe and a like wouldn't hurt, inshallah. And I cannot wait to see you in the next episode of the Deenspiration podcast show. I've been your brother Usman. Until next time, have a wonderful day. Stay safe. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you and protect you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Allah, Allah.